I'm Robert Field. I'm the co-chair of Common Sense for Drug Policy, and we're here at the Normal Conference in San Francisco. It's always very good to get back and see some of our colleagues, people we've worked with for 5, 10, 15 years, some of us 20 years. But it may be that we're perched now, the movement is perched for real success maybe in the next 5, 10 years, and success being the treating of the tax regulation and control of marijuana the way we do alcohol, treating hard drugs as more of a public health issue than a criminal justice issue. That's long been Common Sense for Drug Policy's position. It was founded by Kevin Zeese and myself almost 20 years ago, and more recently, over the last decade and a half, Mike Ray has joined us, as well as other board members, and Mike's been our chair, and so I've had the pleasure of working with two outstanding activists over the last 15 years.
What will it take to legitimize, to move this forward, to be embraced as complete truth?
Well, that's the question that we're all asking, Dean, and but certainly this is an incremental effort, and the successes with medical marijuana certainly have gone far, not only to bring blessed relief from pain and suffering for so many, but also in belying the accusations of out of ignorance and out of mean-spiritedness sometimes of people concerning the nature of marijuana. And I myself don't partake of any illegal drugs just simply because they're not my drug of choice. But from the time I was in college, as a student of history and economics, I was familiar with the abject failure of alcohol prohibition, and I would say to myself, why would we be going down the road again of prohibition? It doesn't work. Didn't we learn anything? And as I've spent decades pursuing my career as a builder and developer and property manager, I would watch from the sidelines and see the horrors, that we were foistering upon people. To me, I really think of drug prohibition as a continuation of Jim Crow. That it is aimed at minorities because their interests were different, their tastes were different, they were foreign to us. And now this is coming from a person who most of his life was a Republican, and was a Republican chair, for a elected U.S. senator and so forth. So I hardly, this sounds, Dean, as though somehow or other that I'm sort of a radical, but I've always been a moderate. But that just happens to be, from all my studies, my belief. That's what this has been. So after a short period of time as a board member of Drug Policy Foundation in my 50s, Kevin Zeese, who had been a leader during the darkest of days, along with Arnold Trebach, and Kevin and I created Common Sense for Drug Policy, and we introduced a few things which I think have been helpful in bringing us to this point of time. But now it's for a new generation. I like to think about us having run the second lap of 4 laps, and now the third lap is commencing, and others, and you can see them, they're going to be the leaders, and they're going to take us, hopefully, to that final victory lap. One of the first things, and this was Kevin's idea, was to create what was the Alliance to Reform Organization. And that was a non-organization. It was a way for the diverse leadership over, at that time, maybe 20, 25 organizations, instead of snarling, competing, and backbiting, to begin to communicate by private list. And I've described the movement as trying to herd catch. You can't do that. No one's going to organize. There are so many different aspects to the war on drugs, with different people from conservative to liberals, people of all sorts of persuasions, focusing on individual or multiple aspects. But the list brought people together. The other thing we did was the public service advertising campaign, and usually 6 or 8 magazines of national prominence, the type that are read by people who are interested in social issues and politics. And these, we just pounded the facts. One side would claim one thing, the other side would claim something else. Nobody really knew what the facts were. Well, we created what was then a smaller book, which is now, it's grown quite large, where we simply excerpted peer-reviewed journal articles and government studies and then gave citations so that any journalist, any student, any government official could see actually what research showed. And if they questioned what we wrote down, because we didn't editorialize, we just took quotes, there were the citations. They could go and see the whole thing. We also then worked on nurturing fledgling organization. I had had experience in politics and in business. I was able to give some suggestions, and of course Kevin was one of the great experts in this nationally, respected internationally, and Mike had had experience and so forth. So we gave them some guidance. We also were able to give them money and help bring them along, and over the years we contributed a considerable amount of funding to the movement, which has helped many organizations to survive and expand, working in different aspects of education and political activism and harm reduction and so forth. For example, syringe exchanges. We recently, one of the great thrills of my life was helping to get the deregulation of the sale of syringes in Pennsylvania. It was one of the last states where you couldn't buy a syringe without a prescription. Well, we know that the greatest cause, over 50% of the cause of contracting of HIV/AIDS is the sharing of dirty needles. Why would we want to prevent people from being able to buy syringes? But, it doesn't take genius to get these things done. Often it just takes somebody prepared to spend the years of doing a bunch of simple steps. One person once described it as moving papers from one desk to another. That's a lot of what political activism is. It's been very rewarding for me because of the many competent, dedicated people that I've run into. And, coming from the business world, it's a big difference when where the values are for the business world to where you're working with volunteers who are struggling, living on very modest sums often, but doing this for the good of the public. Prohibition doesn't work, and it is bringing such incredible hardship. We have the highest rate of incarceration in the world per 1,000, per 100,000. I mean, all these people in prison, and what happens to their families? What happens to their children? The drug war is a huge industry. A lot of people are eating from that trough, and it's very hard to change one's thinking under those circumstances. But the great example of people who have done that are our comrades from LEAP, L-E-A-P, who are the often retired police officers who have seen, and one of the reasons they're so motivated against the drug war is they feel such guilt. You meet a LEAP, I mean, they now have thousands, I think they have close to 15,000 people in LEAP, former prosecutors and police and detectives, and you wonder what so motivates them, and it becomes so clear. And Common Sense did a DVD on LEAP, and at one point Jack Cole, one of the founders, was talking, and he was describing his time as a undercover agent, and he just paused. He said he must have put 2,000 people in jail or something, and as he said it, the pause, and you could just see the pain come over the man. Jack Cole's very motivated. There's few things that'll motivate you, Dean, like guilt. I think most of us have been guilty enough to appreciate that.